Remember this necklace? The one that sparked a lot of controversy online, and all for good reason? Well, we're going to talk about the woman whose actual name is engraved upon that necklace, and that is the Empress of Hindustan, Nur Jahan. And she was a force to be reckoned with, and without a doubt, she was one of the most influential women and the most powerful women of her time. But unfortunately, since we live in a Eurocentric kind of a world, if you Google influential women in the 17th century, these are the results you get. European, European, European. And then interestingly, I scrolled down and these are the articles it was suggesting, and I never even typed the word English. But that is the sad reality that we live in. However, that does not mean that we can't take initiative and learn for ourselves, right? And just to put it out there, during the 17th century, even the few Europeans that actually had the privilege of meeting her were very awestruck by her. They were like, no way is this woman this powerful. What's going on? Hi, my name is Misha and welcome to Tarikhi Tales. So let me give you some context first. Nur Jahan is a part of the Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire was founded in 1526 by a guy called Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur in an area which is now known as India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. The empire lasted for more than 200 years, starting all the way in the north from Kabul down to the Deccan. The empire was extremely rich and was a source of very prominent rulers. One such emperor was the Emperor Jahangir. Now, Jahangir is often overshadowed by his father, Akbar the Great, who actually expanded the empire vigorously. But when you look at Jahangir's rule, you find that there was gradual expansion, there was a flourishing of the arts. Overall, it was like A plus, environment. So Jahangir was an adept and steady ruler. But a lot of people say that he wasn't the only one ruling the Mughal Empire in his time. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that there was a co-sovereign with Jahangir. And in this case, it is Nur Jahan, Padshah Begum. Some older historians, people who've done work previously on the Mughal Empire, don't really talk much about this. But a lot of the newer historians are talking about how this is such a significant thing. There was a woman who was almost the emperor of the Mughal Empire. Now, before Nur Jahan had become empress, she was born as simply Meher-un-Nisa. Meher-un-Nisa's parents, Ghayaz Beg and Asmat Begum, actually lived in what was then Persia and is now modern-day Iran. And her father was actually appointed in the court of Shah Tahmasp. But due to some unrest and due to some issues going on in the region at that time, the entire family up and moved to the much more welcoming and open to foreigners Hindustan at that time. And the ruler at that time over there was Akbar the Great. Meher-un-Nisa's father ends up being appointed in the court of Akbar himself, and that is where Meher-un-Nisa grows up in Fatehpur Sikri. Now, she was born during the journey from Iran to Hindustan in the year 1577 in Kandahar. And Kandahar at that time was right on the cusp between Persia and between the Indian subcontinent. And then Meher-un-Nisa herself grows up within the Mughal court, where in Fatehpur Sikri she's actually exposed to a lot of different cultures. She's exposed to Hindu cultures, the mystical Sufi cultures, other religions, other dialects, languages. Not to mention, on top of all of this, since she's grown up in the court, in the Zanan Khana in the court, she's gotten top tier education. She is adept in almost everything. She's also a really adept huntress. And when we say huntress, we're not saying birds and rabbits. We're talking about killer tigers. So she's really this all-rounded figure who's got everything. And on top of that, she's also really beautiful. Now, at the age of 17, she's married off to this guy called Ali Kuli, or Sher Afghan Khan. And with him, she moves all the way across the country to Bengal, where she lives for the next 12 years. And it's said that living in Bengal and living there, the experiences she had there also had a huge impact on her and really broadened her horizons. There, she had one daughter called Ladli Begum. But after 12 years, her husband passes away and she moves back into the Mughal court in 1607 or 1608. And at that time, the ruler over there is the Emperor Jahangir. And they meet, they fall in love. I have a whole other video about how they meet and fall in love. I'll link that at the end of this video. And they get married in 1611. So after their marriage, now Jahangir is smitten by her, and eventually he bestows like a lot of gifts on her. One of the gifts is like this necklace that we're talking about, and then he also bestows like titles. Like he first called her Nur Mahal, which means the light of the palace. Then he gives her the title of Nur Jahan, which is light of the world, in 1616. So that was some context to understand, like what was going on in the background. And now, when I say that she was a co-sovereign, like she almost ruled the Mughal Empire with Jahangir, how can I make such a big claim, right? But see, historians talk about the fact that there are actually three main markers of an Islamic ruler, and especially ones followed in the Mughal Empire. The first one is that you could become an emperor by having the Friday khutbah or the Friday sermon read out in your name. That's something that a lot of princes have done as rebels and all, and that's one of the key markers of being a king. The sermon is in your name. The second thing, and a very important thing, was having coins minted in your name, because that really tells everybody in the empire who's in charge, right? And the third thing was the issuing of fatwas, or these royal edicts, which were only given by the emperor. There were some other legal orders that other members of the family could pass, but fatwas were really reserved for the emperor himself. No other people could just, pass a fatwa. So these three things combined actually made a Mughal ruler. And Nur Jahan, believe it or not, fulfilled two out of the three things splendidly. The first thing she fulfilled was the fact that gold and silver coins were minted in her name in the year 1617. The coins are minted bearing both Jahangir and Nur Jahan's name, which kind of indicates that, well, her authority is equal to the authority of the emperor himself. This is literally the only time in Mughal history that a woman's name appears on the imperial coin, and it's a really effective way of telling everybody, down from traders in the market to the foreigners who are coming into the empire, who's really in charge. And there's no other way. Like Jahangir had 19 other wives, but only the name of Nur Jahan shows up on this coin, and she really does have that much influence and power, and everybody can see it physically. So, and that's literally, as I mentioned, the only time in history when a woman's name comes up on a coin in the Mughal Empire. So that was one of the requirements, right? Coins have been minted in her name and circulated within the empire. Now, let's go on to another incident. In the same year, in December 1617, while the rest of the imperial entourage went to Agra, Nur Jahan actually broke away from the entourage, decided to go to Toda, which is part of one of her Ajmer estates. And it was there that she issued the first of her many imperial edicts against the Raja Surat for the money that he owed. And although the order itself, the fatwa kind of itself, showed her authority, but the way it was crafted also really showed who is in charge. Now, historically, the other women of the Mughal court were able to issue some edicts, but they were things called hukam or nishan. But Nur Jahan here, she issues a farman, much like the emperor does. And unlike all these other women who were supposed to kind of sign these hukams or nishans by telling where they borrow their power from, like saying, oh, the mother of Akbar or the daughter of Akbar or whatever. But in her case, Nur Jahan, she just signs it her name. She's not saying I'm wife of Jahangir, no. She says I'm Nur Jahan, Padshah Begum. Basically saying I'm Nur Jahan, the lady king. So it shows that her power wasn't really borrowed, her power was all her own. Now she's fulfilled two of the three requirements. The one she does not fulfill is not having the Friday khutbah read out in her name. But you see, maybe that's a requirement that she never really wanted fulfilled, because her influence was actually so much that even the future kings understood that if they want to become king one day, the future princes, that if they want to become king one day, they need Nur Jahan on their side, because she's got this, So the best example is the next king in line, Shah Jahan or Prince Khurram. It's said that Prince Khurram, he really sought out her advice and sought out her wisdom on a lot of things and her counsel, and he would call her Walidai Khud, as in saying my own mother, even though she wasn't his own mother, she was his stepmother. And he would also publicly show how much he respected her. For example, once he defeated Malik Amber in 1617, he throws this huge feast. And he kind of throws the feast in honor of Nur Jahan because he knows that the only reason he succeeded was because Nur Jahan and her family kind of kept all the other princes at bay and made sure that there's no, funny business going on. And on the ceremony, he actually gifted all the women of the harem, a lot of things. But it's said that he gifted Nur Jahan 3 times more things than he gifted everybody else, including his own birth mother. Now, some people say that, Nur Jahan was only able to get as much power as Jahangir or some of these, courtiers would allow her to have. She didn't really have that much power. But on closer inspection, a lot of newer historians find that no, she actually fought a lot to kind of keep the power that she had and the influence. She was actively doing that. Because there were courtiers such as Mahbub Khan who were very displeased by how she was, molding the harem, bringing it into the political space, how she had so much influence, much more than all these other courtiers. Being sexist was a thing back then too, we can't bear women having a lot of power. Mahbub Khan has famously stated once, "Was there any king so subject to the will of his wife?" displaying his evident hatred of Nur Jahan's role in politics. But to be fair, unfortunately, 400 years have passed and we still hear such comments from people wherever there's a husband who's, man enough to not be insecure of his wife. But all the other insecure men can't really take it. But what's more interesting is that, the Europeans at that time, they really could not handle women having so much power, especially women who doesn't even have a child with the emperor. Because in Europe at that point, women having that much power was really not that popular. Yes, there were queens, actual queens by birthright who were ruling, who had some power. But if you're the wife of a king or something like that, you have a role, yes, but that much influence and power? Not really. So we have people like Thomas Rowe who come into their bar and they're very displeased by Nur Jahan, especially because Nur Jahan once kept his seal overnight and returned it the next day without confirmation of a meeting with the emperor. So he's really displeased and he writes in one of his letters, "The rest of this motion is inward among women, of which sort, though he keeps 1,000, yet one governs him and winds him up at her pleasure." Of course, Thomas Rowe let his imagination run wild and used an oriental lens in when, thinking about the harem. He thinks, oh my god, the emperor has 1,000 women lined up. No, just 19 or 20. But he's basically extrapolating what he thinks is going on in the harem, and he's not comfortable with Nur Jahan having so much power. But this was one of his first instances of meeting Nur Jahan. Thomas Rowe's opinion actually changes eventually when he actually starts doing business with her. And talking about business, one of the things that's really important is also money. Because yes, Nur Jahan had a status, she had influence, she also had power. But one undeniable truth is the fact that if you're rich, then you also have additional power and influence. And yes, she was the wife of a king, so the king has a lot of money. But what I'm talking about is the fact that Nur Jahan herself was an entrepreneur. She was a businesswoman. She had her own money. She didn't really need Jahangir's money. She was really rich on her own as well. And let me tell you exactly how much. Nur Jahan basically actively participated in trade and international trading as well. She worked with the Portuguese, she worked with the British. This guy, Thomas Rowe, she ends up working with him a lot and he actually starts to admire her, and a lot of the letters also have admiration for her. Other than this, Nur Jahan also had administrative control over certain areas, which she then used to collect revenue and earn domestically as well. We have records telling us that from the town of Baruch, she would earn about 230,000 Mahmoudis. Mahmoudi was a silver coin of 88 grains. This was earned through tolls which were levied on internal trade. She also had a Jagir, the Jagir of Toda near Ajmer, which earned her almost 2 lakh rupees at the time. Now, 2 lakh rupees at that time, you may think, well, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, okay. In addition to this, she also earned from the area of Sikandra, where her officers would tax the trade of some things like the cotton coming from Bengal, silk coming from Patna, and some spices from here and there. Now, I wasn't really able to find an exact conversion of the money of that time to this time, but I was able to find a really good example to show you how much 2 lakh rupees must have been worth back in the day. So we're talking about the 1600s, right? And I have an example from the 1690s when the East India Company is trying to buy 3 villages. How much do you guys think they bought 3 villages for? Now, these 3 villages later actually became the city of Calcutta. The answer is 1300 rupees. So you could basically buy 3 villages in 1300 rupees. Now imagine the scale or the actual value of the 2 lakh rupees that she just earned from one of her estates. This is not counting the other taxes from Sikandar or from either of her estates or from the businesses, the many businesses that she actually ran. So there you go. This is a snapshot of how Nur Jahan was actually one of the most influential and powerful women of the world of her time. And at that time, being powerful and influential in India meant a lot because that time India was super rich. There's a reason the Europeans were all headed towards India. They saw how rich and resourceful this area was, and it was a major player in world trade. It wasn't like backwaters or anything. So that is the power and the influence of Nur Jahan that I was talking about in my last video. And let me know what you guys think. Did you guys know about this beforehand? Again, here at Tariqi Tales, we're working at trying to reclaim our histories, our stories. And if you guys are interested in helping us grow and you want this channel to continue, then consider becoming a Patreon. That would really help us out. And make sure to subscribe, hit the notification button, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.